Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be reading a story from, I think it's a Polish story, perhaps Russian, but I think it's a Polish story, and it's called King Kojata. And I'll show you in case I'm saying it wrong. If any of you are Polish, I've got Polish families, you can tell me if I'm wrong or right. But King Kojata, and we'll call it that. That's what we'll call it. Okay, remember at the end of the story, there'll be a shout out today to two little girls. So wait till the end and you'll see if it's you. Okay, here we go. King Kojata from the Green Fairy book by Andrew Lang. There was once upon a time a king called Kojata, whose beard was so long that it reached below his knees. That doesn't seem very sensible, does it? 3 years had passed since his marriage and he lived very happily with his wife. But heaven granted him no heir, which grieved the king greatly, so he wanted a child. One day he set forth from his capital in order to make a journey through the kingdom. He travelled for nearly a year throughout the different parts of his territory, and then, having seen all there was to be seen, he set forth on his way home. As the day was very hot and sultry, he commanded his servants to pitch tents in the open field, and there await the cool of the evening. Suddenly a frightful thirst seized the king, and he saw there was no water near. He mounted his horse and he rode through the neighbourhood looking for a spring. Before long, he came to a well filled to the brim with water, crystal clear, and on the bosom of which a golden jug was floating. King Kojata at once tried to seize the vessel, but though he endeavoured to grasp it with his right hand and then with his left, the wretched thing always eluded his efforts and refused to let itself be caught. First one hand and then with two did the king try to seize it, but like a fish, the gobbler always slipped through his fingers and bopped to the ground, only to reappear up in another place and mock the king. Plague on you, said King Kojata. I can quench my thirst without you. And bending over the well, he lapped up the water so greedily that he plunged his face and beard and all right into the crystal mirror. But when he had satisfied his thirst and wished to raise himself up, he couldn't lift his head because someone held his beard fast in the water. Who's there? Let me go, cried King Kojata. But there was no answer. Only an awful face looked up from the bottom of the well with two great green eyes, glowing like emeralds, and wide mouth reaching from ear to ear, showing 2 rows of gleaming white teeth. And the king's beard was held not by real mortal hands, but by 2 claws. At last, a hoarse voice sounded from the depths. Your trouble is all in vain, King Kojata. I will only let you go on one condition, that you give me something you know nothing about, and which you will find on your return home. The king didn't pause to ponder for long. For what, thought he, could be in my palace without me knowing about it? The thing is absurd. So he answered quickly, Yeah, I promise you shall have it. The voice replied, Very well, but it will go ill with you if you fail to keep your promise. Then the claws relaxed their hold and the face disappeared in the depths. The king drew his chin out of the water and shook himself like a dog. Then he mounted his horse and rode thoughtfully home. When they approached the capital, all the people came out to meet them with great joy and acclamation. And when the king reached his palace, the queen met him on the threshold. Beside her stood the prime minister, holding a little cradle in his hands, in which lay a newborn child, as beautiful as the day. When the whole thing dawned on the king, and groaning deeply, he muttered to himself, So this is what I did not know about. And the tears rolled down his cheeks. All the courtiers standing round were much amazed at the king's grief, but no one dared to ask him the cause of it. He took the child in his arms and tenderly kissed it. Then, laying it in its cradle, he determined to control his emotion and began to reign again as before. The secret of the king remained a secret through his grave, careworn expression. Though his grave, careworn expression escaped no one's notice, in the constant dread that his child would be taken from him, poor Kojata knew no rest, night or day. However, time went on and nothing happened. Days and months and years passed, and the prince grew up into a beautiful youth. And at last the king himself forgot all about the incident that had happened long ago. I'm going to show you a picture of him looking into the well. I don't know if you can see it because it's so beautifully illustrated, this book. Can you see? Hope so. Okay. One day the prince went out hunting, and going in pursuit of a wild boar, he soon lost the other huntsmen and found himself quite alone in the middle of a dark wood. The trees grew so thick and near together that it was almost impossible to see through them. Only straight in front of them lay a little patch of meadowland, overgrown with thistles and rank weeds, in the centre of which a leafy lime tree reared itself. Suddenly a rustling sound was heard in the hollow of the tree, and an extraordinary old man with green eyes and the chin crept out of it. Do you remember the man in the well had green eyes, didn't he? Uh-oh. A fine day, Prince Milan, he said. You've kept me waiting a good number of years. It was high time for you to come and pay me a visit. Who are you, in the name of wonder? Demanded the astonished prince. You'll find out soon enough, but in the meantime, do as I bid you. Greet your father, King Kojata, from me, and don't forget to remind him of his debt. The time has long passed since it was due, but now he will have to pay it. Farewell for the present. We shall meet again. With these words, the old man disappeared into the tree, and the prince returned home rather startled and told his father all that he had seen and heard. The king grew as white as a sheet when he heard the prince's story and said, Oh, woe is me, my son. The time has come when we must part. And with a heavy heart, he told the prince what had happened to him at the time of his birth. Don't worry or distress yourself, dear father, answered Prince Milan. Things are never as bad as they look. Only give me a horse for my journey, and I'll wager you'll soon have me back again. The king gave him a beautiful charger with golden stirrups and a sword. The queen hung a little cross around his neck, and after much weeping and lamentation, the prince bade them all farewell and set off on his journey. He rode straight on for 2 days, and on the third day came to a lake smooth as glass and clear as crystal. Nor a breath of wind moved, nor a leaf stirred. All was silent as the grave. Only on the still blossom of the lake 30 ducks with brilliant plumage swam about on the water. Not far from the shore, Prince Milan noticed 30 little white garments laying on the grass, and dismounting from his horse, he crept down under the high bulrushes, took one of the garments and hid himself with it behind the bushes which grew round the lake. The ducks swam about all over the place, dived down into the depths and rose again and glided through the waves. At last, tired of disporting themselves, they swam to the shore, and 29 of them put on their little white garments and instantly turned into beautiful maidens. Then they finished dressing and disappeared. Only the 30th duck couldn't come to the land. It swam about close to the shore, and giving out a piercing cry, it stretched its neck up timidly, wildly gazing around, and then dived under again. Prince Milan's heart was so moved with pity for the poor little creature that he came out from behind the bulrushes to see if he could be of any help. As soon as the duck perceived him, it cried in a human voice, Oh dear Prince Milan, for the love of heaven, give me back my garment and I will be so grateful to you. The prince laid the little garment on the bank beside her and stepped back into the bushes. In a few seconds, a beautiful girl in a white robe stood before him, so fair and sweet and young that no pen could describe her. She gave the prince her hand and spoke. Many thanks, Prince Milan, for your courtesy. I am the daughter of a wicked magician. My name is Hyacinthia. My father has 30 young daughters and is a mighty ruler in the underworld, with many castles and great riches. He has been expecting you for ages, but you need have no fear if you will only follow my advice. As soon as you come into the presence of my father, throw yourself at once on the ground and approach him on your knees. Don't mind if he stamps furiously with his feet and curses and swears. I'll attend to the rest, and in the meantime, we had better be off. Another picture. There you go. With all these words, the beautiful Hyacinthia stamped on the ground with her little foot, and the earth opened, and they both sank down into the lower world. The palace of the magician, was all hewn out of a single carbuncle, lighting up the whole surrounding region, and Prince Milan walked into it gaily. The magician sat on a throne, a sparkling crown on his head. His eyes blazed like green fire, and instead of hands, he had claws. As soon as Prince Milan entered, he flung himself onto his knees. The magician stamped loudly with his feet, glared frightfully out of his green eyes, cursed so loudly that the whole underworld shook. But the prince, mindful of the counsel he'd been given, wasn't at least afraid and approached the throne, still on his knees. At last the magician laughed aloud. You rogue! You have been well advised to make me laugh. I won't be your enemy anymore. Welcome to the underworld. All the same for your delay in coming here, we must demand 3 services from you. For today you may go, but tomorrow I shall have something more to say to you. Then 2 servants led Prince Milan to a beautiful apartment, and he lay down fearlessly on a soft bed that had been prepared for him and was soon fast asleep. Early the next morning, the magician sent for him and said, Let's see now what you've learned. In the first place, you must build me a palace tonight. The roof of purest gold, the walls of marble, the windows of crystal. All around you must lay out a beautiful garden with fish ponds and artistic waterfalls. If you do all this, you will be rewarded richly. But if you don't, you shall lose your head. Oh, talking gruffly like that tickles the back of your throat. I don't know if you've ever done that. Oh, you wicked monster, thought Prince Milan. You might as well have put me to death at once. Sadly, he returned to his room with his bent head brooding over his cruel fate till evening. When it grew dark, a little bee flew by, knocking at the window, and it said, Open, let me in. Milan opened the window quickly, and as soon as the bee had entered it, it changed into the beautiful Hyacinthia. Good evening, Prince Milan. Why are you so sad? How can I help being sad? Your father threatens me with death, and I see myself already without a head. And what have you made up your mind to do? There's nothing to be done. After all, I suppose I can only die once. Now don't be so foolish, my dear prince, but keep your spirits up, for now there is no need to despair. Go to bed, and when you wake up tomorrow morning, the palace will be finished. Then you must go all around it, giving a tap here and there on the walls to look as if you've just finished it. And so all turned out just as she said. And as soon as it was daylight, Prince Milan stepped out of his room and found a palace which was quite a work of art, down to the very smallest detail. The magician himself was not a little astonished at its beauty, but could hardly believe his eyes. Well, you certainly are a splendid workman, he said to the prince. I see that you're clever with your hands. Now I must see if you are equally accomplished with your head. I have 30 daughters in my house, all beautiful princesses. Tomorrow I will place a whole 30 in a row. You must walk past 3 times, and the 3rd time you must show me which is my youngest daughter, Hyacinthia. If you don't guess rightly, you'll lose your head. This time you've made a mistake, thought Prince Milan, and going to his room, he sat down at the window. Just fancy my not recognising the beautiful Hyacinthia. This is the easiest thing in the world. Not so easy as you think, cried the little bee who was flying past. If I weren't here to help you, you'd never guess. There are 30 sisters so exactly alike that our own father can't even tell them apart. Oh no, then what am I to do? Said Prince Milan. Listen, answered Hyacinthia. You will recognise me by a tiny fly I shall have on my left cheek. This cheek. But be careful, for you might easily make a mistake. The next day, the magician again commanded Prince Milan to be led before him. His daughters were all arranged in a straight row in front of him, dressed exactly alike, with their eyes bent to the ground. Now, you genius, said the magician, look at these beauties 3 times, and then tell me which one is Princess Hyacinthia. Prince Milan walked past them and looked at them closely, but they were all so precisely alike that they looked like one face reflected in 30 mirrors, and the fly was nowhere to be seen. The second time he went past him, he couldn't see anything, but the third, he saw a little fly stealing down on one cheek, causing it to blush a faint pink. Then the prince seized the girl's hand and cried out, This is Princess Hyacinthia. You're right again, said the magician in amazement, but I've still another task for you to do. Before this candle, which I shall light, burns to the socket, you must have made me a pair of boots reaching to my knees. If they aren't finished in that time, off comes your head. The prince returned to his room in despair. Then, when Princess Hyacinthia came to him once more, changed into the likeness of a bee, and asked him, Why are you so sad, Prince Milan? How can I help being sad? Your father has set me an impossible task. Before this candle is burnt to the socket, I'm to make him a pair of boots. But what does a prince know of shoemaking? If I can't do it, I'm going to lose my head. What do you mean me to do? Asked Hyacinthia. Well, that's what there is to be done. That's what he demands, and I can't do it, so you'll just have to make an end to me. Not so, dearest. I love you dearly, and you shall marry me, and I'll either save your life or die with you. We must fly now as quickly as we can, for there is no other way of escape. With these words, she breathed on the window, and the breath froze on the pane. Then she led Milan out of the room with her, shut the door, and threw the key away. Hand in hand, they hurried past the spot where they had descended to the lower world, and at last reached the banks of the lake. Prince Milan's charger was still grazing on the grass which grew near the water. The horse no sooner recognised his master than it neighed loudly and springed towards him. It stood as if rooted on the ground, while Prince Milan and Hyacinthia jumped on its back, and then it sped onwards towards, like an arrow from a bow. In the meantime, the magician was waiting impatiently for the prince. Enraged by the delay, he sent his servants to fetch him, for the appointed time was past. The servants came to the door, and finding it locked, they knocked. But the frozen breath on the window replied in Milan's own voice, I'm coming directly. With this answer, they returned to the magician. But when the prince still did not appear, after a time he sent the servants a second time to bring him. The frozen breath always gave the same answer, but the prince never came. At last the magician lost all patience and commanded the door to be burst open. But when his servants did so, they found the room empty, and the frozen breath laughed aloud. Out of his mind with rage, the magician ordered the prince to be pursued. Then a wild chase began. I hear horses' hoofs behind us, said Hyacinthia to the prince. Milan sprang from the saddle, put his ear to the ground and listened. Yes, he answered, they are pursuing us and are quite close. Then no time must be lost, said Hyacinthia, and immediately turned herself into a river, Prince Milan into an iron bridge, and the charger into a blackbird. Behind the bridge, the road branched off 3 ways. The magician's servants hurried across the fresh tracks, but when they came to the bridge, they stood not knowing which road to take, as the footpaths stopped suddenly, and there were 3 paths for them to choose from. In fear and trembling, they returned to tell the magician what had happened. He flew into a dreadful rage when he saw them, and he screamed out, Oh, you fools! The river and the bridge were they! Go back and bring them to me at once, or it will be worse for you. Then the pursuit began afresh. I hear horses' hoofs, sighed Hyacinthia. The prince dismounted and put his ear to the ground. They are hurrying after us. They are already quite near. In a moment, Princess Hyacinthia had changed herself, the prince and his charger, into a thick wood, where 1,000 paths and roads crossed each other. Their pursuers entered the forest, but searched in vain for Prince Milan and his bride. At last they found themselves back in the same spot they had started from, and in despair they returned once more with empty hands to the magician. Then I'll go after the wretches myself, he shouted. Bring a horse at once, they shan't escape me. Once more the beautiful Hyacinthia murmured, I hear horses' hoofs quite near. And the prince answered, They're pursuing us hotly and are quite close. We are lost now, for that is my father himself. But at the first church we come to, his power ceases. He may chase us no further. Hand me your cross. Prince Milan loosened from his neck the little gold cross that his mother had given him. And as soon as Hyacinthia grabbed it, she'd changed herself into a church, Milan into a monk, and the horse into a belfry. They had hardly done this when the magician and his servants rode up. Did you see no one pass by on horseback, Reverend Father? He asked the monk. Prince Milan and Princess Hyacinthia had just gone on this minute. They stopped for a few minutes in the church to say their prayers and bade me light a candle wax for you to give you their love. I'd like to wring their necks, said the magician, and made all haste home, where he had every one of his servants beaten to within an inch of his life. He's a nasty piece of work, isn't he? Prince Milan rode on slowly with his bride without fearing any further pursuit. The sun was just setting, and its last rays lit up a large city they were approaching. Prince Milan was suddenly seized with the ardent desire to enter the town. Oh, my beloved, implored Hyacinthia, please don't go, for I am frightened and fear some evil. What are you afraid of? Asked the prince. We'll only go and look at what's to be seen in the town for about an hour, and then we'll continue to journey to my father's kingdom. The town is easy to get into, but more difficult to get out of, sighed Hyacinthia. But let it be as you wish. Go, and I'll wait for you here. But I will first change myself into a white milestone. Only pray that you be careful. The king and queen of the town will come out to meet you, leading a little child with them. Whatever you do, don't kiss the child, or you will forget me and all that has happened to us. I will wait here for you for 3 days. The prince hurried to the town, but Hyacinthia remained behind, disguised as a white milestone on the road. The first day passed, and then the second, and then at last the third, but Prince Milan didn't return, for he had not taken Hyacinthea's advice. The king and queen came out to meet him, as she said, leading with him a lovely fair-haired little girl, whose eyes shone like 2 clear stars. The child at once caressed the prince, who, carried away by its beauty, bent down and kissed it on the cheek. From that moment his memory became blank, and he'd forgotten all about the beautiful Hyacinthia. Oh no. When the prince didn't return, poor Hyacinthia wept bitterly, and changing herself from a milestone into a little blue field flower, she said, I will grow here on the wayside till some passers-by tramples me underfoot. And one of her tears remained as a dewdrop sparkling on the little blue flower. Now it happened shortly after this that an old man passed by, and seeing the flower, he was delighted with its beauty. He pulled it up carefully by the roots and carried it home. Here he planted it in a pot and watered and tended the little plant carefully. And now the most extraordinary thing happened. For from this moment everything in the old man's house was changed. When he awoke in the morning, he always found his room tidy, but into such a beautiful order that not a speck of dust was to be found anywhere. When he came home at midday, he found a table laid out with the most dainty food. He only had to sit down and enjoy himself to his heart's content. At first he was so surprised that he didn't know what to think, but after a time he grew a little uncomfortable and went to an old witch for advice. The witch said, Get up before the cock crows and watch carefully till you see something move, and then throw this cloth quickly over it and you'll see what will happen. All night the old man never closed an eye. When the first ray of light entered the room, he noticed that the little blue flower began to tremble, and at last it rose out of the pot and flew around the room, put everything in order, swept away the dust, and lit the fire. In great haste, old man sprang from his bed, covered the little flower with the cloth the old witch had given him, and in a moment the beautiful Princess Hyacinthia stood before him. "What have you done?" she cried. "Why have you called me back to life? For I have no desire to live, since my bridegroom, the beautiful Prince Milan, has deserted me." "Prince Milan is just going to be married," said the old man. "Everything is being got ready for the feast, and all the invited guests are flocking to the palace from all sides." The beautiful Hyacinthia cried bitterly when she heard this. Then she dried her tears and went to the town dressed as a peasant woman. She went straight to the king's kitchen, where the white apron cooks were running about in great confusion. The princess went up to the head cook and said, "Dear cook, please listen to my request. Let me make a wedding cake for Prince Milan." The busy cook was just about to refuse her demand and order her out of the kitchen, but the words died on his lips, and he turned and beheld the beautiful Hyacinthia, and he answered politely, "You've just come in the nick of time, fair maiden. Bake a cake, and I myself will lay it before Prince Milan." The cake was soon made. The invited guests were already thronging around the table when the head cook entered the room, bearing beautiful wedding cake on a silver dish, and laid it before Prince Milan. The guests were all lost in admiration, for the cake was quite a work of art. Prince Milan at once proceeded to cut it open, and then, to his surprise, two white doves sprang out of it. One of them said to each other, "Dear mate, do not fly away and leave me, and forget me as Prince Milan forgot his beloved Hyacinthia." Coo, coo. Milan sighed deeply when he heard what the little doves said. Then he jumped up suddenly from the table and ran to the door, where he found the beautiful Hyacinthia waiting for him. Outside stood his faithful charger, pawing the ground. Without pausing for a moment, Milan and Hyacinthia mounted him and galloped as fast as they could into the country of King Kojata. The king and queen received them with such joy and gladness as had never been heard before, and they all lived happily ever after for the rest of their lives. That was such a long story, but it worked out okay in the end. I wonder what happened to that nasty magician with his big green eyes. Who knows? Anyway, at the end of this story, that story was really long. And if you're still listening, Rosie and Ruby, that story's just for you, Rosie and Ruby from near Scarborough. Lovely, and thank you for listening to my stories. Take care till next time. Bye.